You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our current sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. As you well know, if you've been following This is Oklahoma, they've been a huge part of this podcast. So this podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling an Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Also, for the podcast, a new sponsor this year that's just come on board. I'm super excited to announce RCB Bank. Since 1936, RCB Bank has offered progressive products and a friendly service. Come in today to find out more about their loan promotion on new, used refinance cars, boats, campers, and ATVs. Visit RCB Bank to learn more. RCB Bank, that's my bank. With approved credit, restrictions apply. Now, let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode down at Bradford House in Oklahoma City. If you're watching the video on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, you'll know that this place is absolutely fabulous. You've probably had pictures here. You probably come here for a coffee or a scone or something, or scone, as some people say. But my guest today is Jason and Sara Kate, who have built this incredible place, or rebuilt this place and renovated it, and it's just absolutely fabulous. People drive past this thing if they're in Oklahoma City, and now it's becoming a big tourist attraction, which is great. But before this stuff, right, take it all the way back. Where are you guys born and raised?
Born and raised here in Oklahoma City.
And I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, actually. My dad was a pilot in the Navy, so we moved around a lot. Yeah. But moved here from Maryland in the 90s, and right before I was going into junior high school. So
Dad was at Tinka then?
He was, yeah. They relocated his flight squadron from Patuxent River, Maryland. So.
And you didn't want to go the Top Gun route and fly planes?
I didn't. No, I had a lot of exposure as a kid. So.
Yeah. So you went to high school here and stayed here, and then went to university?
Yeah. I went to Oklahoma Christian School in Edmond, and then UCO, Central Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's where we lived, and it was easy to do and comfortable, and could pop in, home from time to time, which was nice.
Yeah, Mum can do your washing, stuff like that.
They
feed you.
They stopped doing that long before I moved out.
Yeah.
But no, it was nice.
Yeah. Sara Kate, what about you?
I went to Deer Creek and then went to OU, and then just stayed here.
Yeah.
At the time in 2011, almost everybody creative was leaving for bigger cities. Oklahoma City wasn't really the creative mecca, so to speak. It's grown a lot, but in 2011, for me, this is my home and my family's here and we're all very close. And I was excited about the possibility of being able to create something here. I knew the city really well, and had traveled quite a bit and saw things in other markets that I thought would be really wonderful here. And so I wanted to be a part of the creation. So
that's the beauty of being in the middle of the country, isn't it? There's so many restaurant people that I know, or fashion or anything, they see stuff come from the coast and it's going to be here, but we just, as long as you travel and keep an eye on it, it'll eventually get here. And thankfully, we're the best spot for it, right? Because you can bring something in and think, well, as long as the timing is right, you're not too soon, it'll succeed. But so from a young age then, did you have like a creative eye and want to do design and creative stuff?
Yes. I wasn't sure specifically what it would be. I come from a family of physicians, and my siblings are all have gone that direction. They're all very technical and just brilliant. And for me, I was always the one collecting things and interested in ceramics and taking art classes after school. And that's really where I thrived and what I loved. And my family just really encouraged me to pursue that in whatever way it happened. So I feel lucky in that respect that everyone kind of knew and encouraged that would kind of be my path.
Got you. So you went to OU to do the degree in creative stuff and kind of pursue that dream?
I thought I would go to design school after getting a business degree. So I was business for 2 years at OU and was sketching on the side of my papers in my 500-person econ class. Second year in, and just had this epiphany of like, I'm not doing this for one more day. So I'm sitting in the first row. I pack up my stuff and just march out of class smiling at everyone as if they should know I just made this like really grand decision.
Yeah.
And called my parents and said, I'm switching and I'm going to do interior design now. And they said, what took you so long? So it was a long few years at OU. I mean, it was 6 years at that point by the time I graduated, but it was well worth it.
Definitely. Did you feel that when you went to do like business first, did you feel like it was like necessary, like kind of family wanted you to do business, or was it like just, no, I think this is a smart thing to do? And
I thought it was a smart thing to do. I mean, I always thought that I would want to do my own thing. And so I think I had the creative bug, but there are a lot of really creative people that are unable to run a business, right? And so for me, I was sensitive to that and wanted to be able to do both.
Yeah. So I'm sure it was a relief then when parents are like, oh, what took you so long? Like, go do you and kind of chase your dreams.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, late hours spent in the architecture college, but it was rewarding work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we found here as well. And I mean, I still do design work, Sara Kate Studios, and it's, long hours, and we're working around other people's schedules and juggling, all sorts of things, but the work is so fulfilling.
Yeah. So. Jason, what about you? What do you go to school for?
I have degrees in international trade and in finance, with a real estate minor, I guess. But I think I declared that major pretty early. I never changed my major. I think I declared it my freshman year.
Yeah.
But had through college sort of worked full-time or nearly full-time in retail and in sales at Alton's men's clothing store in Edmond, close to the campus. And then also worked my last year of school at S.J. Haggard in Nichols Hills Plaza. So I guess even going back to like second, third, fourth grade, was always the top salesperson for the class fundraiser.
Yeah.
If it was magazine subscriptions or candy bars or whatever, and just kind of always. And even my parents would tell you when I was little, I was like a little like kind of peacemaker and negotiator, and so always like to find middle ground with people. And so when I got exposed to retail sales, particularly at a high level, when I'm 17 or 18, $1,000 suit, I mean, still is a lot of money. But I mean, at that time, the type of people you're selling those to are pretty particular, right? Like it's got to, you have to have some product knowledge. It has to end up fitting when they walk out of the store. And the type of people who have the budget to spend that kind of money on dress clothing are salespeople and executives. And so I developed good relationships, with the customers there, and was always kind of curious about what everybody did. And so when customers would have an appointment or they'd leave, I would always go ask the owners, okay, tell me about this person, and would want the whole rundown about, well, how'd they get to where they're at? And, what line of work are they in? And a lot of their relationships with the owners of those stores went back decades in some cases. So it seemed like, I think my thought process was at the time, like, I know I'm at some basic level, maybe like a skosh innately, a persuasive salesperson, I guess. So maybe I should like focus on this. And if I can sell $1,000 suit, then what other products or services are out there that cost more? And how does that scale up over a career? And the customers I had who seemed to like keep the schedules that like afforded them some flexibility and allowed them to travel, for work and for pleasure. They weren't the doctors and the attorneys, because it's all about hours, for those people. It's kind of like, okay, the people who are really achieving at a high level are getting a lot out of, in some cases, not a lot of time invested in what they're doing. So one of my customers was a commercial general contractor, and I think it was my summer, probably going into my senior year, I decided I was going to become a real estate investor, and ended up buying a house on 18th Street in Mesta Park. I would have been not, I don't know, 19.
Great decision.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I wanted to kind of get in and fix it up. And this is probably like not before the existence of HGTV, but kind of before that big, housing.
Before you had to pay 5 times extra because every person was like, I'm going to be a real estate investor and flip houses now, and it's easy.
Exactly. Well, and it was actually like the easiest deal I ever bought, because the guy had been trying to renovate it himself for like 7 years and was desperate to get rid of it. Yeah. So there's in fact that he carried a note for 100% of the purchase price. And so, we put the money in. This customer of mine who's in construction, I managed the project. He put the money in because
19 didn't have it,
didn't
right?
have any.
Yeah.
And then we split the profits. And I was like, this seems like a good model, And so we ended up building a handful of single family homes together and doing some other things. And then another one of my customers was a commercial real estate broker. It's like, man, this guy comes in at like 2 p.m.
Chilling.
Yeah,
he's like, done for the day.
Wants to talk. Not done for the day, but like definitely
he's got time.
In charge of his own schedule.
Yeah.
And I was like, and that's cool, and goes on nice vacations. And if I could, I was getting exposed to residential. I wonder what that looks like for commercial, and how are you involved in commercial real estate and sales? And it turns out that's a whole industry, And so my senior year, I interned with him, and then as we were finishing the last few of our construction projects, this gentleman and another guy were opening an office for a Southern California-based firm, and I was the first hire and became a commercial real estate investment sales broker at that point. And so that's kind of how my career progressed, was, college student retail sales into construction and real estate investment brokerage. Now, I guess, development on a small scale. But I think I declared that international trade major because I was so used to, moving around a lot. When we moved here, I mentioned my dad being in the Navy. It was our 6th move in 7 years.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't think my little brother had lived more than one place for more than a year at any one time. And so I just always thought that was neat. And the world was a big place, and kind of got the travel bug in college on a trip to San Francisco. First time I'd ever been to California. And I thought, I'm going to, just be traveling all around the world, interacting with different cultures and learning to do business. And it turns out I never left, what became my hometown. But am fully equipped to become an international businessman when the when the opportunity arises.
Right, definitely. So do you think, like, because you moved around a lot, do you think, because sales is like, obviously people work very hard at it, but it takes like natural ability as well. Do you think because you moved around a lot and you always had to make new friends, you naturally made it, like, it just came comfortable to you and it was natural that like you just found sales to be, I guess, quote, easy?
I think it probably had something to do with it. But if you look at my brother, for instance, it's just the two of us. We're a family of 4. And we're wired really differently. And he actually, when you sort of get to him, is very personable. Yeah. But I can't imagine him going out and like calling on someone, just sort of out of the blue. But he moved around just as much as I did. His experience was a little different because I was 4 years older, so I was probably more in my formative years when we were doing that. But in my business, I know people who are highly productive salespeople that only have talent and have no systems and processes, and don't ever want to develop them, who are highly successful. And then I know people who you really have to struggle to get 2 words out of them and edgewise, and they are highly productive because they only focus on processes and systems and are disciplined and put out
follow up until they tell them the person like passes out or dies, right? That's like sales quotes and stuff.
So it really is a wide spectrum of people who I think are successful in sales, but at the core of it, like, once once it's time to communicate a message to that customer or client, that's really where all the value is. Right. And some people can just do that because they can read the room and they have great interpersonal people skills. Yeah. Other people are just so highly trained that they can do it. But either way, you've got, when the time comes when someone wants to say yes, whether you're really personable or not, you need to be able to identify that moment and be prepared in what you're going to say.
Right, and take that opportunity and like, okay, you've clearly crossed the line. You've made the decision up. Now it's just my job to guide you to signing or saying yes or picking out the intricate details. Yeah, which is that's really cool because like you don't strike me as someone like typical brash American human being that people back home would think of an American. Like very loud and walks in and owns the room, has got so much confidence, right? But clearly you're very good at what you do. Otherwise we wouldn't be sat in this building today, right? And the other projects that you've done as well, which is really cool to see that and to go from, international stuff to just sales. And I think now if people now are soft, right? Quote, soft compared to what they were 10, 15 years ago. And if you got salespeople coming out now and you say, hey, here's 500 phone numbers you got to call this week, they might cry with the thought of rejection. Whereas it seems like back in the day, people were a bit more harder and you're like, that's just normal, get on with it. Yeah. It would be interesting to see like if you were dropped in the world now with those skills that you were learning back then, like how much, if you would do significantly better or what, like they're just, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see that, right?
Hard to say. Well, and again, all those things are necessary. Right. Like day one, you're not just going to walk into an environment where your phone's ringing off the hook. A lot of it is kind of, what's the saying? One of my career coaches at one point had a saying that it's not about who you know, it's who knows you. Yeah. And that's totally true. I mean, if somebody wakes up one day and says, I could really I need an introduction, I'm going here, whatever, you want to be the first person they think of. Yeah. Because the odds that the salesperson tracks that person down on just the right day are pretty slim, and so building presence is a lot of it. And like you can do that through systems and processes or do it just through being a big personality. But I think it was an advantage for me getting started in my career because I finished graduated high school at 16 and then college at 20. And so, I couldn't even buy alcohol, as a college graduate if I wanted to take someone out, or whatever. And so I would like to think I still am, but definitely at the time was pretty baby-faced. And so, like, you're talking, it's no longer $1,000 suits. It's multi-million-dollar, investments. And so product knowledge for me was just everything because with no experience and, with no gray hair, or any credibility, really, the only way you build that is really knowing what you're talking about. And that's all I was sort of left to do. And so I just sort of had to own it. And had all sorts of obstacles to overcome from a credibility standpoint in those meetings. And had someone senior, fortunately, that I was partnered with who could be the gray hair at the table and kind of vouch for me, in a sense. But the only bigger disadvantage to being fresh-faced and young in an industry like that is being fresh-faced, young, and not knowing what you're talking about.
And coming in I am new in town, strolling in like you own the world.
So it kind of required a little bit of a quiet confidence and a real subject matter command.
Yeah. I guess fast forward a little bit. How'd you guys meet?
Jason was a client.
Do you tell two different stories to this?
No, Jason was a client, and we had a mutual friend who had introduced us. Jason had just bought a condo a few blocks from here, actually, and we just ran into each other one night, and he asked, hey, I need some furniture. Will you help? So I went over and looked at it, and I actually had been in love with that building for years. It sat dilapidated for how long? 15 years or something, longer, 20 years?
It had a car-sized hole in the roof. Yeah. And the basement was full of water because it had just, over the years, taken on that much. Yeah. Previous owner had just let it sit. Yeah.
There's more to this story, but obviously I love a sad building. And so I was just so excited and said, yes, absolutely. So we worked together for about a year. We were both seeing other people and, going on about our lives, strictly professional. I think by the end of the project, we had started to become really, really good friends. He was one of my best friends at this point. And project was finished, and maybe 2 months later, we started dating.
I don't know what the date on the finish was, but I moved in October.
Yeah.
Maybe it was done by December. Yeah, I guess it had been right around the holidays.
Yeah.
So our first discussion about dating was on February 1st, 2013.
Yeah.
We kept it a secret from our friends for like a month.
I'm sure it was the
just to
worst
say,
kept secret.
Your friends didn't know.
Right, yeah. You come home and you're like, guess what happened today? Yeah.
We were just such good friends. It was like, if this isn't going to work, we want to be able to maintain this and it not get awkward. So we were like, let's see how it goes for a few weeks. And the rest is history. So,
that's awesome. Yeah. So during this point, I guess you would graduate college and you're going into your own Sara Kate Studios, design stuff. You have clients and you're doing interior design stuff, right?
At that point, I was just being scrappy. Being a freelancer in Oklahoma City at that time, being young, I said yes to pretty much anything. Just trying to make a living and just get a lot of experience, build my portfolio. So I did things, from finding a piece of furniture to styling someone's home for a party to doing, a remodel. And so at that point, I was very much still in the building phase of my business. I had a friend who helped me occasionally, but I was the only employee of Sara Kate Studios. And it was a sweet time to look back at.
So I guess perfect for you to just you're doing building projects and then your interior design. It's like perfect mix. So tell us about when this building comes on the market and you're just did you buy it way in advance and then wait to do the build out, or how does that come about? How does that happen?
Well, when we bought the building, it was our first year of marriage, right?
But leading up to that, we had been kind of having discussions really through the time we were dating and engaged about, kind of to your point, okay, you have a real estate background and you have a design background. Those two things overlap quite a bit. What kind of life are we going to have? Or, how are we going to work? Are we going to have our own careers? Are we going to work together? What does all that look like? And so as those discussions, progressed, it's kind of no, we really should keep our own businesses and keep our work lives, and at least in terms of how we earn our income, and earn a living, we should continue to nurture these businesses and have our own, sense of ownership over the areas that are of our life that that we have expertise in. But also, two people in those two lines of work, by definition, collaborate. And so we should think about maybe how we want to do that, not necessarily as a full-time way to earn a living, but as a way to invest, in the future and for our family. And another part of it was, for her in particular, it's satisfying and fulfilling to complete projects and execute great design and see the finished product but it's also always for someone else, and you can still get a lot of fulfillment out of that. I would, I'm speaking for you,
but you wish that you're I wish I could move into this spot instead of doing it for someone else.
Also, it's kind of at some level, in my line of work, whether it's advisory services or her line of work with design, you, at the base layer of it, you're creating value. And at some point in your career, you should be transitioning into creating value for yourself. Maybe not exclusively, but kind of working towards that as the goal, if that's your skill set.
Yeah.
And so that was really the discussion, is how do we create value for ourselves? And residential and hospitality kind of became two kind of sectors in the space that we were interested in and focused on, that would be easy to plan, develop business plans for, as opposed to going out and like both of us learning about industrial warehouses, for example.
Yeah.
I'm not excited about that. For the
super
record.
glamorous work, that, isn't it?
So, which I love that product type, but that wasn't going to be how we.
I mean, if you were the ones to bring Amazon here, then you're cashing in right now, aren't you?
So, travel was always a passion of mine. Sarah had studied abroad and had traveled fairly extensively as well. And so when we were together, that was our recreational lives were spent travel planning or traveling. And that's just the thing, that area of our lives that we both were kind of had really a lot of shared passion in. And so when you travel a lot, I mean, you're constantly exposed to hospitality. I mean, by definition. And so, places where people live, where they like choose to live, but also the places they choose to travel and the places they choose and the ways they choose to spend their time was kind of something we could engage with really easily. And so we had been talking about both residential projects and hospitality, but the hospitality a little harder to do because the projects that we really admired and that felt like they were truly something special to the point of being difficult to copy were just difficult things to identify and bring to fruition. If you want to go build something out in a green field, I mean, you just turn in plans with an application fee and get your permit and off you go. The projects that we were really drawn to were ones that were almost uncopyable, just either because of where they were located or how it was zoned, or just the barriers to entry to develop competitive properties would be very, very difficult. And kind of to your earlier, question about or comment about timing in the market, it's also, can Oklahoma City absorb a boutique hotel? Is anybody going to care? Are we such a price-driven market that design gets little to no value, but also like design at what level, because what someone's opinion of good design is could be something we don't identify with at all. And so it was, because Oklahoma is such a new state and we historically haven't done a phenomenal job at preserving historic architecture. And by preserving, I just mean not tearing it down.
Right. Like they did in Oklahoma City.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's just, as opposed to many U.S. cities, not by European standards, but by American standards that have huge stock of historically significant buildings and entire, districts that may not even be designated as such, but just continue to exist because of the quality of that kind of built environment. Oklahoma City doesn't really have that. And so it's not like there was one of these on every corner and we just had to pick the right one. It was a challenge to kind of try to identify. But what's funny about that is as much time as we spent talking about buildings that could be a fit and what the format looked like and how many rooms and does it involve food and beverage, the building we ended up buying to do this project happened to be, 3 blocks from, where I was living. And we hadn't really targeted it in that way. Probably would have happened eventually, but it was December and the sign, because it was on the way home, we would drive by it 4 times a day. And the sign was going up in the yard and I was like, she had just
You saw them putting the sign in the yard.
Yeah, and she had been in the building because there was an art dealer who lived here and had his gallery.
Okay.
She had been in the building weeks before, like within fairly recent.
So it was livable when you got it then? Well, he lived in it.
He lived in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was occupied.
Occupied is a great word,
So had been in the building. Sarah had been to an estate sale, I guess, here, like around that time.
I went the weekend after we had it under contract.
Yeah, so I guess all that was happening about the same time. But sign was going up, and I was like, hey, that building on the corner, they finally put that up for sale. Because it hadn't traded since like the 60s.
Yeah.
60s, 70s. The lady that bought it raised her family in here and then moved away and owned it for decades after that. But I called the broker who was a friend, and like, can we get in there to look at that? Yeah, sometime next week, because this was on a Friday. I was like, no,
like now, like I'm outside.
And so we got in and looked at it, and Sarah, like she said, loves a sad building, but like her goals, not just to find a sad building, but like the saddest building. And I don't share in that passion equally.
You're like, babe, it's almost blowing over.
I just need like the bottom quartile. I don't need the bottom 1% of condition. But
well, and I thought for sure he was going to kill the idea. I mean, we walked in, and the first unit that we saw, because it was originally 4 units, 4 luxury apartment units. The first one that we walked into was the previous owners, and everything was pink. The carpet, the walls, the draperies, the sofas,
tile.
the countertops, the kitchen cabinet. I mean, absolutely everything. And I walked in and gasped. And I mean, seeing this place now, yeah, totally. But I mean, if you see this place now, obviously I love pink. I find it very exciting, and it's eccentric. And the house just had a mood to it, which is the whole purpose of, having an old building, is that
it's got a lot of character.
Ideally, it has character, and it has a story, and it has. I mean, it is a character in the story that you're trying to create.
Because like downtown, warehouse conversions, those are great, and those can be interesting from a design standpoint. But at the core of every single one of those, it's concrete floors and pillars. And so it's just, what do you do inside of that? And there's maybe a business operating there, but no one living in it, And so, but to answer your question, that was December of 2015. We closed on it in July of 2016. Spent another 9 months probably working through design, and then everything in between, was obviously like conceptual design, construction feasibility, financial feasibility. We had to get it rezoned.
What was it zoned at? Just
R1, single family residential, even though there were 5 apartment units on site for this building. So no matter what anyone did, it was going to have to be rezoned. Which, was not
that a nightmare
difficult
process?
In Oklahoma City.
It wasn't that hard?
Well, compared to some cities where you could spend years on zoning for something like this, it had its own set of challenges and took some time. And required pretty early and active engagement with the neighborhood and several layers of that. So, design and development, I would say, was probably like a year and a half. We put it out to bid with our kind of like ideal set of drawings, schedule of finishes and functionality, and it just obliterated the budget. I guess I wish we had an investor with bottomless pockets, but unfortunately, this project, in theory, it needs to pencil it.
But if you're going all in, you are going all in, and we're going to do this. We're going to make it work, whatever the cost.
Exactly, but we also need to be, a little savvy and scrappy and figure out ways to bring this in within budget. So we went back and spent probably another 6 months, I would say, working through redesign and value engineering. I think our VE list was probably 80 line items, of things where we were making decisions of things to do differently. And then put the project back out to bid. Again, that would have been January of 19. And then we started demo and site work like 1st of April of 19. It was about a year-long construction project. And we were, like she said, starting to plan move-in of the furnishings and getting the building systems, technology systems up and running. And then COVID-19 hits, and it's like, well, I guess we'll wait this one out, And I remember at the time, really kind of everyone talking about like, oh, this is just it's another virus, or it's like a swine flu or a SARS or something. It's serious.
Early March or whatever.
But like people were still saying things like, well, just wait till summer because it'll get hot and the virus can't.
The
virus can't live in the heat. And I was like,
Okay.
Thinking to myself, like, then how is it spreading in the
Right.
Philippines and Brazil? And so there obviously a huge amount of unknowns,
Yeah.
but even in early March or mid-March, we probably thought we would be open midsummer.
Yeah.
And we just had to keep kicking the
knocking it
can down
back.
the road.
Yeah. So
4-year project, but
right.
a little of that was artificially delayed or
Sure.
extended. But the other thing, I mean, too, is like that is a long time and sounds like a long time. There's some intricacies and complexities that necessitated it, but also you're doing this out of our kitchen. There's no office. There's with development staff, that is working on the.
When you're still
1,000
working at the
things.
time, I assume, right? You're still doing your own projects at the same time, and
Yes.
like this is like coming home and your side project, right?
Yeah.
Kind of side hustle, and it's like
Yeah.
a huge deal.
Yeah, and had 3 children
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
that time too. So, I mean, it's been
Yeah.
How old are the kids then?
3, 2, and 1.
So you just let's knock them out. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. To get the worst
Yeah.
part over.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you can do this project and have 3 kids, you can really do anything you want now, right? Like you've
I
kind of
hope
been
so.
through it and go through COVID and everything.
That's what we're telling ourselves.
It's great to have on the resume. Anybody comes to you and is like, look, we got plenty of experience dealing with stuff.
Well, one day that will be true, but
Yeah.
on the day-to-day in the moment, I mean, the last year obviously was just discouraging on a lot of levels,
So when you're like, you mentioned you traveled abroad and you have all these things going on and these design ideas that are coming in and you're thinking of stuff and then you see this building, where like, I guess, have you drawn from? Is there anywhere specific that you've drawn from, or did you just think, I like a little bit of this, this, and this, and we're going to make it work?
Well, so conceptually, we loved the idea of if William Bradford, who originally built the building, if it had stayed in the family. Like, that was just a really intriguing idea to us, that it could be this multi-generational property that has been collected and curated and added to over the years. So in my business and what I love, I mean, what we both love, is largely vintage and antique pieces. Again, like some worn character, a story, something that feels really unique and has a mood to it. So I think Europe was the obvious choice. Our inventory list of what we needed to stock the place was substantial. And shopping markets in the States, with as much as we needed, we were going to be priced out. It actually was less expensive for us to go abroad and have lots of choice, and bring everything back. And so
in the States, your options are basically all catalog and custom, which in and of itself is not cheap, but it looks like catalog furniture, even if it's custom built. If everything's the same, it's clear that it just all came on one truck from one vendor. And to go, not even the antique, but even the higher quality vintage pieces to buy in the States, by the time they've gotten in inventory with a U.S. dealer, they've been marked up. They've been passed through 4 or 5 middlemen and been marked up every time. And I mean, Oklahoma City is growing, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that there's a original Palo Buffa, armchair in the corner. It's still not going to get you $400, $500 a night. And so, how do we make this work on an Oklahoma City budget? Was honestly, that was probably the biggest challenge of the entire thing from start to finish. Is how do we get the feeling and convey the story, but also furnish it with original pieces that designers in the U.S. are copying, to try to get affordable versions of. How do we do that, and kind of obviously do a good job with construction and
in a timely manner too, right? Like if you've got this list and you're like, hey, I don't have to worry about my timeline. I can pick this list and slowly make it. But when you got a deadline, did you just like fly to Europe with a shopping list and think, great, let's do it?
We did.
That's literally what happened.
Left the kids at home.
I mean, we had an Excel
we didn't have any
spreadsheet
the first time.
No, I was pregnant.
pregnant
I
with
was
the first
pregnant with Edie. But no, we had a shopping list. We initially went to a big market, basically like the Round Top Antique Fair of France. Went with a shopping list. We're very excited, ready to go, ready to buy all of the things. And the first day, I think I was crying halfway through the day because there just wasn't enough stuff.
Yeah.
Like we needed.
And the stuff they had was too fine as
yes,
well.
Yes. It wasn't cool.
Yeah.
they were like museum pieces
Gotcha.
that someone would put in a formal living room and say, nobody go in there.
Yeah. Right.
And for us in a hotel, like, I mean, this stuff it can't be pristine, and it shouldn't be pristine.
Mm-hmm.
It should be interesting and stylish, but not fine. So I was
functional too.
Functional.
Yeah.
And so I was freaking out, like, what are we going to do? We cannot go home empty-handed. And we had hired a company to do our freight. They were going to pick up everything for us, pack it, put it on a container, and get the container to Oklahoma City. So with the few things that we bought, they said, okay, you guys have got to go see Michelle.
Yeah.
And we both are like, who is Michelle?
Is this
what?
Michelle?
Michelle.
Yeah.
Who are you talking about? Who is this? Where do we need to go?
Well,
and so,
because they're like, you guys, you told us you wanted antiques. What you want is not antiques. What you want is brocante, which is essentially well-worn, well-used antique things. But, antique in the truest sense of the word, it means pristine condition, right?
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah. So
at least the type.
You don't want something that was
trading.
aged but still usable, not like perfected. And if someone put their coffee on it and the table fell through, it's going to cost you $1,000 because you're never going to see that again.
Exactly. So
So
we hopped
how
on a
was
train.
Michelle?
So they described him as dressing in completely monochrome outfits.
Okay.
So obviously I'm intrigued. I'm like,
As a designer.
yes, I'm like, we're
gotta
getting
meet
on a
this guy.
train. We have to see this man. And so we went.
He dresses in monochrome outfits, typically pastels,
Yeah.
and buys Ruinart champagne by the pallet. We're like, wow, we got to make a trip to see this guy.
Oh.
Totally worth it.
So he was in.
Yeah.
We were in. We were in.
Avignon. We took the train from
Yeah, we were
Avignon.
outside of Avignon, and then they said, but you're gonna have to travel. He's in Lyon. So we said, well, great.
Sure.
Yeah. We don't have an agenda except.
How
just
long
to go by.
were you there for? Had you not booked a return flight yet?
We had a return flight, but it was 10 days.
So you came for
or
10
longer.
10 days?
10 days to
2
2 weeks or
Okay.
something
Yeah.
like this.
Which is, again, it's not a lot of time.
No.
When you fly in, you basically get 2 travel days of you,
Yeah.
and then, then they say, hey, you've got to go to Lyon and see Michelle.
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
We
okay.
had
And we
a lot
have
of ground to cover.
hundreds of pieces to buy. Like we gotta
Yeah.
find them. So Michelle picks us up from the hotel. We go to his family home. His dad was an antique dealer.
He was born there.
Yeah, he was born at that house. Family has since passed away, so it's just him there. And he's taken over this entire property. And when you pull up, the whole thing is fenced to the point that you can't see what's inside. And I walked through that gate, and there is just garden furniture stacked, piled high, everywhere. And I just turned and I hugged him.
Well,
Thank you
and
so much.
and I think you did start. Actually, I think you did shed a tear.
Oh, I think I did.
Because we had been.
I think I did.
We got a little frustrated early on, and
Well, you're also pregnant at the time, too.
Yes.
exactly that had nothing to do
Very
with
right.
it.
Halfway around the world.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No, the anxiety of needing to find this stuff in mass and just finding someone who had a similar aesthetic
And
and
just got it.
just got it.
This
and
was his life, right? He loved this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we walked in, and I could have taken everything that was in the house. And so he said, one of his phrases is "make your own world." So he said, "Okay, make your own world. I'm going to go get coffee. You just wander around." And so we spent, the entire day piling stuff up from him. And I would say most of our favorite pieces came from him. And we've been back to see him multiple times since. And
Well, we've on return trips stayed with him.
Yeah.
Had several home cooked, dinners in his home. He actually, he and his partner came to see us.
Oh, they've been here.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
Oh, that's
one
great.
of his godparents is based in New Orleans.
Okay.
And I think is a dealer there.
Yeah.
And he had promised to go see them, And, to someone coming
this far
from continental Europe,
Oklahoma's not that far
to us,
away.
it doesn't seem that far. But to them, they're thinking, well, if I'm going all that way, then, New Orleans to Oklahoma City, that doesn't look that far.
Yeah, it's connecting flights. No big deal. Yeah.
But it's a 9-hour drive.
Right.
So, 9-10 hours. But he went to visit there and he said, all right, I want to come see you all. I want to see what Oklahoma City is all about. Because he just thought it was bizarre that we were even talking about doing this project in a place that he associates with cowboy hats and cattle pastures and all this. So he's like, I'm coming to Oklahoma City. I want to make a weekend of it. This is going to be great. I want to rent a car, but not just any car. I want the biggest, tallest pickup truck you can find.
Such a European thing to do, because I do the same thing.
In his monochrome outfit.
Oh yeah, just give me the biggest lifted F-250 you can find, and I'm driving it all
with
the
his,
way.
handlebar mustache.
That he waxes.
And beret.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Beret. So he was like, we took him around town to kind of some of our favorite spots, and the managers, operators, bartenders, and stuff were like, "Who is that guy? Is he a friend of yours? Is he an arms dealer? Is he?" We got all these questions about why we were with this really super eccentric, French guy, but
brilliant.
Become good friends.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. So I guess you easily filled that container with and brought that container back.
Well, that was the first one.
The first time, I guess.
Yeah. That was the first 40-foot container.
Yeah.
And then the second trip was centered around a fair, a market, that happens a time or two a year in Parma, Italy.
Yeah.
And so we sort of built the trip around that, spent some time in Milan, but bought quite a bit at that fair, and then also went back across the mountains to Lyon, did another kind of buying session, and then sent back a second 40-foot container.
And we bought in Paris a little bit too. On that trip, there was another fair there,
and Normandy, I guess. Yeah.
Ah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Kind of from all over,
But I guess now, we were talking about this the other day, but it wasn't good timing on purpose. You referenced timing earlier, but with what's happened with supply chain logistics, COVID-19, particularly transoceanic shipping, I think that if we wanted to do that today, it probably would have been cost prohibitive, because I think the cost to get a 40-foot container across the ocean today is more like, I was seeing prices like 50, 60,000, per.
Yeah.
And huge delays, obviously.
Yeah.
And,
not to mention construction costs going through the roof now as well.
Well, yeah, a friend of mine in the business said the other day, he's like, you guys, in all honesty, it was probably, at least on the new construction portion, and then a lot of what went into this building, minimum 20% different, increase in price, maybe closer to 30, depending on what you're buying and when. But he was like, you guys have probably, just by nature of increases in construction costs, probably built 20% equity in this project. And I was like, that's a good theory.
That's on paper. That's not in my bank account right now.
I was like, unfortunately, lenders don't really care about that.
Can I get a new appraisal on this place, please?
That'll solve everything, right?
Definitely, Oh, that's so good. So you're doing the design out, and I guess the hotels around the rooms around the back, you built those in as well, right? Because it was just a parking lot around back. And you poured concrete and all that stuff, basically, right?
Backyard with some gravel.
Yeah, but there was no structures back there. So was that just, hey, we need more rooms, we have this, that was originally in the first design, and hey, we got the room, let's throw this in? Or does that kind of come as a, hang on a second, we have this opportunity?
We wanted to create more density, I think, just for the feeling of the place, and really love the idea of an intimate courtyard spanning the two, just as a gathering place. In Oklahoma City, I feel like for restaurants, the options for outdoor dining are few and far between, and that's something that we really, it's even more important now and in the last year, but then having the opportunity to do outdoor dining spaces where people could linger was really valuable. And so I think that was a part of the conversation too. I think you had ideas on how many rooms you wanted. but aesthetically and conceptually, it made a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, I mean, density and scale, matters because, in this case, it's a 36-room property, but even if it was 100 rooms, you still just need one general manager, right?
Yeah.
And one digital content director. And so as you have the ability to add scale, but also maintain kind of the integral qualities of why it feels a certain way or what the service model looks like, you want to try to maximize that to the best you can. So some of it was financial and economic. Some of it was just like the design theory that projects that incorporate historic architecture with new construction in a thoughtful way are just interesting. And some combination of both in between. But I think your like corporate, career-long hotel owner, operator, developer, looks at this and, at some level, rightly so, and are just like, I wouldn't do that project because there's no scale to it. Like, I need, 50 rooms, 100 rooms maximum for it to make any sense. And, maybe at some level that's true depending on what the product is and what you're trying to do. Some of the case studies that we toured and owners and operators we got to know can make it work with 12 rooms. And so there's lots of different ways to do it in that middle ground. But we wanted the food and beverage program to be kind of front and center, and we wanted it to be a place where we have regulars coming in multiple times a week for French pastries or cocktail after work or a glass of wine on the front patio, and that sort of front facing buzzy food and beverage operation kind of drives some of the hotel demand as well. And the people that are in there frequently become, little brand ambassadors out in the public. And so if it were more of like a limited service hotel with just a vending machine, basically, prepackaged protein bars and bottled water in the lobby, it couldn't just be a 36-room project.
Right. Yeah. And you're right. Like it's, people come here, they hang out, they have breakfast, they have coffee, like I said, French pastries, or they come after work and have a cocktail and hang out on the patio. It's a great patio, by the way, and just hang out. And you're right, they do become ambassadors, because the design, to your credit, is very, very Instagrammable. Right? That's now a thing, sadly, for people. I say sadly. I take a lot of pictures. Probably shouldn't say that, but I'm sure that was a good thing going in, and as a design perspective too, it's like knowing that people are going to want to come here and hang out because the drink and the food are going to bring them here, but then they're going to want here and they're going to want to take more pictures, and I think probably the reach that those pictures have had, right, has been like the best marketing strategy for you guys anyway, because you don't have to, you have people doing your work for you. It's great, isn't it? It's like back to your point earlier about being the referral person, right? You want to be known as the person that someone wants to call on. If people want senior shoots or photos or magazine shoots, they come and like, oh, where can I come to in Oklahoma City? You guys are now like pretty much at the top of that list because of the different colors, and you can do so many different shoots in one location, right? It doesn't all look the same, which I mean, I love. I don't have the eye for it, like what you do, but I definitely appreciate it.
Well, and I mean, going back to the why did we do this in the first place, I mean, from a design standpoint, it was exciting for me to be able to have, carte blanche and just be able to do whatever I wanted. I think I would have a really hard time. I mean, not so much anymore now that I've done it, but 5 years ago, trying to convince a client to paint all of their trim seafoam, I think would have been a non-starter. But for us, it was like, okay, let's like run with these things that we're really excited about. They may scare the hell out of everybody else, but I think when we do it, it'll be embraced. And then it'll create a backdrop and then create community. And, this is supposed to be a gathering place for people in Oklahoma City, not just our guests, our hotel guests. And so seeing that is really gratifying. And the comment about Instagram, like, I mean, I will say sometimes there are people doing shoots here and it's very disruptive.
Right.
And that part of it I do not love.
There's a process to go through to do it
yes,
properly.
yes.
Yeah.
But the fact that there is a whole new respect for design and appreciation that was not here 5-10 years ago, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm relieved that that's happened
Right.
and that it's embraced.
Back when you started college, you probably didn't. I mean, there was probably a dream to have a place like this, but the actual reality of it, the way it has turned out, is probably far more. It's exceeded your expectations, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, when you said there was no, back in 2010, 2011, there was nothing like this here, was there?
Well, and seeing our customers as well. I mean, it's so cool to see just the mix of people and. Oklahoma City has grown so much, and the appreciation for design has grown so much, and everyone's vocabulary, and even people picking up the matchbooks and appreciating the little styling, and it's exciting.
Well, I think, you would know obviously, but it seems like a lot of interior designers could go a whole career and never get the chance to be a lead on interiors or furnishings of a hotel project, let alone like an independent boutique project where they're not subject to brand standards or, like I said, catalog custom furniture orders. And part of the design thesis as well was kind of like when in residential interior design, things have gotten so vanilla, like meaning much more monochrome. Like, remember the early 2000s? It was like deep hues of color, faux finishes, travertine, granite. Lots of like kind of layer to the building materials themselves. And it's gone the other way now, where it's just a lot cleaner. Yeah, lots of black and white, lots of grays. And there's a place for that for sure. But if that's what you're living in, that's probably not what you want to experience as a traveler. Like when you're traveling and having, particularly staying overnight, like living in a place for one night out of 365, or maybe it's your only visit ever, and it's the one night you spend there, in a lifetime. You should feel like you're transported somewhere else, and at least with the type of operations we want to run, the type of projects that we want to expose people to, they should be memorable, because it's it's a part of our brand cornerstones that like memories that really linger, like sort of all hinge on the details. It's usually not like the big grand entrances and things that cost a lot of money that make you talk about how you feel about physically experiencing a place. It's some of the small details, I just remember they had that one little, thing. And so that's what we've, really tried hard to do.
So is there anything that like people come here and you just wish that they noticed more than they actually do? Is there something that like you've taken so much time designing and put a lot of effort into that people kind of gloss over, and it might drive you mad? Because to a designer, it really stands out to you and you're like, I love this, but no, everyone kind of misses it.
I'm not sure.
Not for me.
No.
Yeah, well, what's more common, I think, because there is so much detail that's bound to happen.
Well, that's why I asked.
And with a lot of people, they just well, I don't mean with a lot of people, but just people in general. Unless you have a trained eye, you really don't even know what you're looking at in some cases. Yeah. So it's not really offensive, or we're not like wistful about people missing, small things. I think what causes us, more grief, just on a personal level, because it's our project and it's our names on it, is when people do notice something different, but it just doesn't resonate. Gotcha. And that was a hard thing to do. And we've only been open 8 months, so it's not like we've been doing this very long. But early on, when your first customers are coming in, and I remember we got one person who stayed in a room that's actually one of the better designed rooms, and just of course went online with a review about it, and was kind of going on about how the desk and the chair don't match, like they weren't part of the same set, and how the desk was a little small for her taste or her frame, or I don't know what, but it's like, yeah, it's a little small because it's a 4-foot French antique writing desk.
Right.
Like that's kind of
it's been shipped
sort of
from halfway around the world.
Sort of the point, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the thing that
that's funny.
Initially, in a way, causes the most grief is like when people do see what you put out there and it's just not on the same wavelength.
Gotcha.
And so we used to take that really personally because it feels like someone's singling you out and saying like, oh, well, this decision you owned, was the wrong one because I don't like it.
Now at least probably you value it because it stands out.
Well, it's not so much. Yeah, that's true, and it's not so much like this is too cool for you to understand. It's not. Doesn't come from a place of like some sort of
ego.
superiorly positioned taste level. But what it's really made us focus more on is that, and there's lots of great advice out there just in the business world in general about developing your customer and maintaining your customer. But it has really helped us reinforce the idea and focus on the fact that we're not trying to, and because you'll never succeed, but our goal is to not make everyone our customer. And when I think a lot of new businesses open, that's their mindset. Is like everyone that walks through the door, we have to convert them and keep them. And in reality, that's impossible to do anyway.
Yeah.
And so what you really want to focus on is not making everyone your customer, but the people who already are your customer is giving them the best experience that you can possibly deliver, connect with them on as many levels as possible, whether it's design or service or quality of the product, and really focus on that core customer. Sometimes we just have to, if someone doesn't like a detail or they overlook something or they have a critique about, we had another lady go on and on for 2 paragraphs about how horrendous to her eyes the downstairs paint color was. And sometimes you just have to say, that's,
but it's about preference.
It's just personal preference, and totally respect that. Like your viewpoint. But this just didn't resonate today, and that's okay.
Well, like when you guys first walked in and everything was pink, and you're like, okay, I love pink, but this is a little bit much, right? It's so funny.
I wanted to make
keep this.
but to that earlier point, every decision I think we've made together, and that I think she's made on her own, where you come to a yes, no, like a binary decision in design, has always fallen on the side of let's do the more unique of the two. Like if there's 2 options we like, and one might appeal a little more to the masses, and one might be a little more design forward or unique or special or unseen in any other project around town, we've kind of erred on the side of like,
let's push the boat out a little bit,
pushing the envelope. Because it's also true that sometimes customers and guests don't know what they want or what they like until they see it. And a lot of people walk in saying, well, these are my preferences. But sometimes you can deliver product or experiences or a level of service that people didn't yet know they wanted. And I think it's already happening now, but the design decisions excuse me, that she made 2, 3, 4 years ago, you're now seeing more and more often in design publications. And a lot of the aesthetic is imported from the UK and from England and from London and certain parts of France, from inspiration from particular periods that were nowhere in Oklahoma design vocabulary 3-4 years ago, that now all of a sudden that color or that finish on that fixture, I'm seeing that a lot more. And so talking about trying to be ahead of the curve, we wanted to push that as far as we could within reason, but also felt a lot of leeway to do so, because with a hotel, particularly one of this nature where experience is everything, it needs to be memorable in a way, and so we would rather some of those more bold choices be the thing people remember as opposed to the other way around.
Well, and to your point earlier, like people don't know what they want until they see it. So I'm sure there's been times where people are kind of, I don't have the eye for it. Like I'm like just my house is gray and white and that's it, right? But I'm sure if I walked in here and I see something I like, I'm like, oh, I want this in my house, and you just pick these paint colors and I'll just take it. Like I'm sure there's been occasions where you've probably had messages from people who have just said, oh, we really like that, we've actually done this in our own house now. We
have gotten some messages. I mean, I think it's cool to see that, to hear that. We want people to feel that way. I think we want people to think outside of the box and be open to new ideas. And I think during conceptualization and in design, and even still as we make decisions on site, we have to remember to listen to our own voice, and to lean into what we're excited about, and not get overwhelmed with how it will be perceived. Obviously, we want it to be accepted, but we want it to feel authentic as well, and for us to be really excited about it. And I feel like if we're really excited about it, then we can get other people excited about it too.
Well, I mean, just seeing what's out there, you guys have done a fantastic job of this place. Like, it's really cool. And you know, there's places like this for me that, like, when I want friends to come to town, like this place like this that I want to bring them to, because, well, my parents, I mean, hopefully they get to travel with this new, you know, the virus everyone gets vaccinated and people can travel. The first thing my parents said is, like, we're booking out, we're coming out to see you, because it's been, I haven't seen them in like ever. I'd usually see them every year, but it's been a couple of years. So I mean, yeah, my mum would love to sit out on the patio and have a glass of wine, or have a, you know, some French pastry and stuff like that.
You should get them to come for vaccine tourism now that it's open. Now it's open to everybody.
Now it's open to everybody,
even non-Oklahoma residents. Anybody adult over 16.
We need to figure that out. Yeah. So. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time. I know we're getting a little long here, and I want to be respectful of that.
No,
how can people find you? How can they follow you? And I guess if they come here, what do you recommend that they do? I guess when they come here, is there anything that stands out?
If you come for breakfast, I would say a pastry of any kind. They're all good. What's your favorite right now?
Right now, the Queen Amman.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah, really buttery, layery, flaky French pastry that is, I think, was dubbed the fattiest pastry in France.
A must have.
Yeah, must have. Yeah.
The avocado toast is delicious. The coffee is great. Dinner is fabulous. If you're going to come for a cocktail, the gin and jam is really, really lovely.
It's kind of my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, but I'll have to tell her because she's a big fan of gin. So we'll have to take that one off the list.
Gin features most prominently in our Spirit collection. So there's a wide range there.
You might have a new local now. Local resident.
Yeah. No, I love just a cappuccino and a croissant in the morning out on the front porch, in particular when the weather's nice. And then I think my other favorite time or experience is after dinner, later at night. All the candles throughout the first floor get lit. The lights go way down. The music goes up. And it's been, strange just with restrictions on bars and restaurants and just people's behavior in general. But hopefully in the not too distant future, and we've seen glimpses of it here and there, past 10 p.m. where people who are vaccinated and feel comfortable around each other are bringing in, small groups, and those groups interact with others, and it actually looks like a social, highly functional social environment again. But I think the nighttime kind of cocktail bar aspect to it is going to be really neat too, because it's there. The bar's only 5 seats when it has seats. Everywhere else, it's kind of private little seating vignettes, and so it's a unique kind of after hours experience for people as well.
Awesome. Well, guys, again, really appreciate your time. For everyone listening, I'll post the links to the social media and the website down in the description. You can go to that. And if you haven't been here, if you don't live in Oklahoma City, come down. It's well worth the visit. Come stay the night, have a cocktail, have one of those fatty, amazing croissants that I'm dreaming about now. And we'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Also, huge shout out to RCB Bank for jumping on board to be a sponsor. RCB Bank's loan promotion is here for a limited time. Head into any of their 40 Oklahoma locations to get as low as 1.79 APR on your next car, boat, camper, or ATV. Apply online at rcbbank.com. RCB Bank, that's my bank. Rate and finance with approved credit. Restrictions apply, and member FDIC. Huge shout out to my sponsors. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next episode. Cheers.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.